rising from the euphoria of his landslide victory in last Saturday's governorship election. Godwin Obaseki, the incumbent governor of Edo State, who ran on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, wasted little or no time on the victory laps. He thanked the people of Edo State for keeping faith with his stewardship and assured them of his renewed determination to ensure that the promises he made on assumption of office will be kept to the letter, regardless of partisan considerations. Well, this morning, we're now being joined by the governor himself, His Excellency Godwin Obaseki, the governor of Edo State, for a conversation on modalities for implementing his Make Edo Great Again vision for governance during his second term in office, managing the internal dynamics of Edo State politics, his plans for security, education, agriculture development, trafficking enforcement, management of COVID-19, among other issues. Your Excellency, the Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, good morning and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us on the Morning Show.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Ruben, and thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Well, first, let us say congratulations to you, Your Excellency, and let us all join the excited people of Edo State in saying Ogbane. I hope that pronunciation is correct.
Ogbane, that means
Ogbane.
it is complete.
Ogbane, which means that it's complete, 4+4, as you wished. But how are you after the election? What's your mood? Are you excited? What would you like to say to the electorate of Edo State? And do you have any fears going forward?
Thank you, Ruben, and thank you, all of you on Arise Television. I think for me, I'm humbled. I'm truly humbled because, you know, in the whole frenzy through the elections, you really never had time to sit back to reflect on what, you know, was going on. But now you have time to think through how we got here, and you just have no option but to be humble, because it's only God, it's only the grace of God that could have made it possible to have left your party, accepted in the other party, contested elections and won. It's only God that could have made it possible. So it's very humbling. And you know, on reflection, you say God must have a purpose, must have his reason why he has given you so much favor. And clearly for me, it's a fact that I should go back and commit myself to him and to work for the people of Edo State. So I say, so it's quite humbling. It's quite, I wouldn't say tiring. It's all exhausting, because you find out even though I should be tired and exhausted, I still have energy to do the things I need to do. You know, we had a victory parade yesterday, and today a victory parade and a thank you tour of the city of Benin City, and today I'm going to start a thank you tour of the region. So, you know, we have so much to be grateful to God for, and you know, the expressions from our people, the way they reacted, the passion they showed, you know, for me was just awesome. And, you know, when I reflect on it, I think of that old woman who asked her grandson to put him on his back, a crippled old woman who asked her grandson to put him on his back and take her out, put her on his back and take her to the polling unit for her to vote, because she just had to vote for me. When you think of those sort of incidents, you have no choice but to commit yourself totally to serving the people.
Indeed, that support must be truly awe-inspiring for you. But do you have a message for your fiercest opponent, Pastor Ize Yamu, who so far is conspicuously silent. You've had a congratulatory message from the president who advised you to be magnanimous in victory. Will you be accepting that advice? APC on the national level has also reached out to you, but your local Edo chapter of APC has been silent. What do you have to say to that? Do you have a message for your opponents in terms of the kind of acrimony that we all witnessed and you experienced directly during the campaigns, and how you'd like to proceed going forward?
This is not the first time I'm contesting with Pastor Ezeyamu. We have a relationship. We have family relationships, and he's a pastor, and I go to church. So we cannot live a life of acrimony or hate. There's nothing. He played his politics the way he knows how to, and I did mine. I will be magnanimous if he comes through. We'll have a conversation. There's enough room, basis for us to have the sort of conversation I would like us to. So for me, I don't think the problem is Pastor Ezeyamu, and I know him well. I think the problem are factors outside of him. The people who lured him into the contest, people who have tried to keep him in the contest, who I'm sure, are the same ones who are trying to fester the acrimony. So between myself and Pastor Isaiah, there are no issues at all, no issues. And the day he calls or he makes up his mind on what to do moving forward, I'm sure we'll be able to have a conversation. But there are people, who who work with him, who know what they have done, who know that they've been vicious and very evil. And I'll be surprised if those ones have the courage to even come up to say they want reconciliation or they want to move forward.
All right, I want to touch on those people. I want to touch on those people. If they come to you, would you stretch out the arms to them? I mean, we had Captain Osa Okumbo here some days before the elections, and he spoke. And there's also the Oshiomhole factor and a couple of other people, even some people say APC Lagos, doing a video to say they should reject you and the likes. I mean, if those people come to you in that spirit of brotherhood, because really when you look at it now, like Dr. Obaseki said in his article I read this morning, he said, God win, and God has won in all of this most importantly. Would you use that magnanimity of heart to say, it's all for the development of Edo, let's just all move on and get back to our lives? Would you forgive?
No, certainly. Certainly. I said for a person like Captain Osa, I have nothing against him. I don't have any issues. I was actually very surprised at the way he went about his the elections and his involvement in the elections. So I have no issues with him at all. He's a Benin man like me, and I have the responsibility as his governor to protect him, to look after his interests. So I have no issues. But for a person like Comrade Oshiomhole, it's just, I wouldn't want to say much, here. But clearly, when you find that you have been deceived, you don't share the same values, you don't trust at all, it's his responsibility to build back those trust, and to show you his real self and see that if his values align with what we represent as a people or what we want to do as a government. Clearly, I'm not, I'm not God that say will not forgive, but as we say in Edo, everybody should now maintain their lane. He should maintain his lane as whatever he is, and I'll maintain mine. I think for us, the challenge with people like Oshiomhole and Ahmed Tinubu is that except they change their style and attitude, they pose a big danger to our democracy because they are extra constitutional players. They've constituted themselves into what they say they are without any constitutional responsibilities and trying to overlord themselves over people who have constitutional authority. And if we allow them, to continue in the mold they are, it will destroy our democracy. And for me, it's that straightforward. I have no, it's not about personal issues. It's about their role in our democracy. You cannot have people who've been elected, who are guided by the Constitution in office, and people who don't have such mandate or authority, or even any checks on their conduct, come and say they want to upset or control people who have been properly constituted in office.
Well, Governor Obaseki, in the course of the campaigns, you had said, well, you and your team, you had managed to remove Oshiomhole as chairman of the party at the national level, and that after winning the election, you will get back to Oshiomhole and deal with him. I thought I read a story like that. Do you still feel that way right now? And then secondly, given the support that you have received, as it were, from the president, who immediately congratulated you, if the APC were to make overtures to you, to ask you to return to the APC, will you consider that? Will you go back to the APC where you were originally, just to prove a point?
At this point in time, I have been elected on a platform of a party, and I had made promises to the people of Edo State. It's not about me. I won election on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, a party which I'm a member now. I think it will be immoral and unfair to begin to even have any other consideration at this point about leaving the platform that give me the mandate. There must be morals in politics. People must be ethical in their politics. At this point in time, I do not think that it is right, it's a proper thing to do, to jettison the platform that brought you into power, the party that brought you into power. Particularly, I have no issues, I have no challenge, I don't have any problems with the party now, and then jump ship. It doesn't arise at this point in time, that issue.
But the other question, Your Excellency, about the plan to drive Oshiomhole out of town.
I don't have any plans to. If he continues to behave the way he's always done, if he continues to be disruptive, if he continues to fund his lions and tigers in Edo State and tries to create problems for us here, then we will not have any mercy.
Wow.
So it's totally up to him.
Okay. I'd like to take you up on that commitment you just expressed to PDP, but first, going back to Adams Oshiomhole and your earlier comments about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, are you describing them as non-state actors?
Well, they are non-constitutional actors. There's no role, at least when I was in APC, I was always surprised at the role of leader. There's nothing in the constitution of our country or even in the constitution of our party giving anybody the role as a leader. The title leader has no roles, no constitutional backing. I think it must be respectful titles that really should be earned out of respect, out of consideration of the fact that they have been useful to the process. But it does not give them any constitutional roles. They cannot sit, in the comfort of their houses or wherever they are and determine who becomes what, who gets into what office, and even when those people get into those offices, how they should conduct and behave conduct themselves. It's very, very anti-democratic.
So going back to your relationship with PDP, it's noble of you to express the fact that you're not going to discard them, having contested and won on their platform. But how do you address the criticisms of politicians like yourself who decamp from one party to the next on the basis of ideology? How, for instance, will you run Edo State in the next 4 years, now that your ideological slant must change, now that you're a member of PDP, to more center-right than left, which is where the APC leans?
In my own analysis of a political spectrum, I really don't see those huge divides because if you look at the manifesto of both parties, the underlying themes, the underlying consideration is, to work for development of the state or of the nation. And we essentially have said we'll do the same sort of things. So I don't see that distinct difference at this point in time. Everybody, we want to provide services to our people. We want to provide, security, safety, and all the good things that will make our people develop. And so that's what both parties are striving to do at this point in time. The issue may be how, but even then, within the Constitution, there's been no clear conversation, no clear distinction as to how. So I don't want to believe that that at this stage of the development or evolution of our political culture, that we have the difference in terms of, the ideological differences are not that sharp or distinct. Because even if you consider the APC itself, at least in Edo State, almost over 80% of the membership of the APC is derived from the PDP. So we're still early days in our democracy, and those distinctions you see in other countries are not as clear-cut yet here. As we do the things we need to do, provide infrastructure, provide all the necessary amenities to our people, may hopefully after that, in a couple of decades, we can now begin to talk about, whether we use left or right. If listening to Pastor Isayamo and his agenda is, if you call this orientation left because he wants to provide, use government resources to provide services to our people, government resources which have seriously dwindled. And if you see that as left, then that may be different. But different because on our own part, we believe that we should enhance government. We should make government create the enabling environment to stimulate the private sector, to stimulate people who want to do things. So I don't consider that ideologically different.
Okay. So I want to talk about those that stood by you, because a lot of people left you. Over 43 people. 42 people left you at a point. But I want to talk about those that stood by you. I want you to say one thing about these people. I'm going to mention their names. Your Deputy Governor, Philip Shuaibu, Wike, Dan Obi. What's your take on these people that stood by you? And the second question from there will be, unemployment rate reduced from 25 to 19% under your watch. How can you bring that even further down to about 15 or 10% in the States? Just those two questions.
You can see my deputy governor and I, share certain values. That's why, through thick and thin, he was with me, and for us, it doesn't matter. What matters most importantly as a human being is your values, who you are, and how you see life. For him, it's not about money. It's about a belief. It's about his belief in God and in certain human values as truth, honesty. And what we're striving to do in our politics is that you don't have to be a crook. You don't have to be a fox to be a politician. You could be a normal person. You could be straightforward and still be a politician and succeed as a politician. The notion that, politics or politicians are almost akin to 419ers is one impression that we must remove from our politics. Politicians, I believe, are people who have said to themselves, to their God and to their community that they want to come and serve and have sought the support from their constituents to go and serve them, not serve themselves. So I think we should begin to understand that, that that's the way to go. And so for people who have supported me, I believe are people who share those values, and that's why I will always rely on them and work very closely with them. In the case of unemployment, everything we're doing is actually geared towards reducing unemployment.
So sorry to cut you in, Your Excellency. I mentioned Wike first.
Okay.
I'd like to know your take on Wike, because at first there was this big talk of him not supporting you, and finally he came around. I want to know your views on Governor Wike.
Governor Wike is, someone who, if he is not convinced about a situation or an idea, there's no way you can bully him into it. But once he's clear in his mind, once he's convinced, once he believes in you, you know him. He's a fighter. He will put everything into supporting what he believes in. I've not seen him as a duplicitous person. He's a very, very committed person to the PDP. He's very committed to the party, and he's also a very, very supportive person and a very considerate person. I mean, that's what I've seen of him. But as you know, he's fearless. If he believes in a cause, he will fight that cause, and you can't cow him. And those qualities I admire greatly about him. It's not true that he did not support me. It's not true. People forgot that immediately I was disqualified. One of the people I first went to was him in Port Harcourt, and he then advised on what to do. And all that time, we were going back and forth. He was trying to make sure that certain issues were cleared so as to avoid challenges in the future. And I'm glad he did, because having had those issues sorted out early in the day, you could see how the process sailed very smoothly.
Right. Unemployment? On unemployment?
Unemployment. We believe that we can move the figures down considerably, because what we've tried to do is create the environment for investments, create the environments for businesses to thrive. And those were some of the salient underlying issues in these elections. Now that we've succeeded in ensuring that the lions and tigers don't come back, that means that we can continue to have order, we can continue to have peace, we can continue to ensure that the underlying things, the underlying structures which every society needs for growth exists. So we have identified other areas where that will drive growth. First, manufacturing. We have designed 2 industrial parks in Benin City, and these parks are actually situated on gas fields. So the energy to drive the people who will be producing already exists. Edo is blessed because we have one of the largest onshore gas reserves in the country, and the NNPC is very active exploring in Edo. Our gas is on land; it's not in the swamp or the deep offshore, and that's the energy you need to drive the production process. Today, we have 55 megawatts already installed, which can be expanded to 200 megawatts around that location. And so we're actively marketing to companies and manufacturers to come in there and begin utilizing those advantages. We are, as you know, pushing very hard in the area of agriculture, especially value crops like oil palm and rubber. Just couple of weeks ago, I gave about 51,000 hectares of land to about 4 companies. I mean, just imagine, cultivating about 100,000 hectares in the next 2 to 3 years. It will take about 2 or 3 people to work on 1 hectare, either preparing the land, preparing the nurseries, cultivating, maintaining the farms. And those are high employment generators. We could see from the existing companies who own plantations, the number of people they hire when it comes to harvest times or maintaining the farms. We're also looking at healthcare with COVID-19, post-COVID-19. This shows us that there's a big market for healthcare. What we need to do, what we have started doing, is thinking very clearly through investments in the healthcare business. We're currently working with the International Finance Corporation on plans, on business plans to attract investments into the healthcare sector. Here again, because of the availability of electricity in Edo, we believe that working with serious investors, we should be able to build infrastructure for healthcare services and attract the human resources to come in to man some of the facilities which we will be encouraging people to invest in. So entertainment is big. Like just last night, working with some of the young artists who were on my campaign trail, I just could not believe the level of creativity and innovation with these kids. So that is another area that we're going to be working with a lot of people to ensure that we can become an entertainment hub. It's very easy to get into Edo State. It's with Edo State, within a 3-hour radius of Edo State, there's 100 million people. So once we have the facilities, we have the sets, we'll be able to attract people to come in to do their productions, to do their sets in Edo. And then lastly, technology. Technology is an area we've already done quite a bit of work. Working with Being One, we already have 400 kilometers of fiber around Edo State, and with fiber optics and electricity and the young talent, the future it's so bright. And so what we need to do is continue to have a very clear thinking in government. It's not that these ideas are new. What is new is organizing government to execute, to implement on its policies. And you can only do that when you have a system that is transparent, a system that's accountable. You may not always get it right, but at least you have a system that checks itself. And if things are not going right, you can quickly fix. And that's why our politics is important. If you have a political process where you have a few people who are just overbearing, who just try to dominate the process, then you may not be able to. It will be choking on the system, and the system cannot breathe and bring out its best.
Well, Governor Obaseki, you were heavily criticized in the course of the campaigns by the persons you have referred to as lions and tigers. But that criticism, they were very specific. They referred to you as Mr. MOU. You signed MOUs and you didn't follow through. And they were very specific. And I would like to identify some of those projects that they used to criticize you. First, the College of Agriculture at Igoriaki, which they said you shut down. The College of Education at Ikeadolo, I think, and then the College of Nursing. What are you planning to do with regard to that particular project? There was also complaint about the Gelegele port, and the people of Gelegele were said, to have put up some process. Also, the Uronigbe rubber plantation. There was also some complaint around that. And then also in January, you signed a deal with Presco, the palm oil project. People pointed to, your critics pointed to all of this. They even added the industrial park at Ikoba as something that you had not looked at. Are these things you will prioritize in your second term, and will you sign more MOUs? And what kind of MOUs should we be looking at?
Okay, thank you very much, Ruben. I think first, you have to understand where we're coming from. When people talk about MOUs, which means Memorandum of Understanding, it's interesting it's come up because the way they understand government is that government will be the sole player in the economy, and so all of this, whatever government wants to do, it will fund it itself from its own resources. And you and I know that that is not the situation. The resources available to government is so, it has dwindled significantly. And that what governments need to do now is to engage with the private sector. And in doing so, unfortunately, most of them don't have private sector experience. They've never really worked out of government, or they've never done anything out of politics. So it's a challenge for them understanding what we've been doing. So the thing to do is no serious player who wants to undertake a project will just walk in there without an understanding, without a framework as to how this will be done. It doesn't mean that you as government have the total control over that process. What it means that you as government, will be encouraging enough, you'll give the support, you'll create the enabling environment, and do the things you're supposed to do to make those things happen. Most of the time, they may not happen at the pace you expect. Secondly, some of these projects are large-scale projects, and they do not happen overnight. They don't happen in a 1 or 2 year time frame. Take the industrial park. I'm just so proud of the work we have done. I mean, it's world-class. It's 1,000 hectares, so our contribution was making the land available, which has been done, doing the environmental studies to make the AIA, to make sure it meets the standards of people who want to come in, make the design for the infrastructure, paying compensation to the people who own the land. You've got to do all of that work, and it's properly documented. It's only when you have done those will they now begin to their own investment appraisals as to bring in the capital in. Those things take time. It's not 6 months, it's not 1 year. For any serious project, you need a time lag to prepare, and that's what has been happening. And we've gone through those preparations, and you'll be amazed at the speed at which some of these projects will now take off. And investors also have to look at the national, the national environment, your monetary policies, fiscal policies, trade policies, as they make decisions. And for $100 million, $200 million projects, they just, they're not going to just sign up and come. Take the river port. The river port is still, the preparations are still on. The funding has been secured, and the work, is progressing. One of the things people don't consider is, if you look at a long-term project like a river port, just the environmental impact assessment will take up to 2 years in some cases, because they have to do, understand, analyze 2 seasons, 2 rainy seasons and 2 dry seasons before, certain confirmations can be made. Excuse me. I'm sorry. And so for a lot of, for the criticisms, it's based on ignorance. But let's make, distinction between projects like the industrial park, the river ports, the, which other one? The industrial park and the river port.
Rubber plantation.
These are, Oriental, that's wrong. That's not true. The Oriental rubber plantation is on as I speak. A company called Rubber Estates. I think it's the company that sold out, that Michelin sold out to. In fact, they are back. We gave them more land, and as we speak, they are planting. So I don't, it's all part of the propaganda, for the campaign propaganda, but it's not true. Rubber Estates is working. They're very happy. I spoke with them, and I'm sure, I'm almost certain that quite a lot of the votes we got in that Urudingbe Access, Urudingbe North, must have coming from the workers who are currently engaged by the company. So let's separate the economic projects from the government projects. If the School of Agriculture, for instance, for people to even say we had a School of Agriculture, it was just dishonest. Because I went into that school, and Ruben, you will not send even your ward to attend that school, what they call the school. It was so badly run. There was very little infrastructure, and I felt scandalized that we could call that a school. And I wasn't surprised, because some of the people were criticizing us about shutting down that place. They managed the school. You can imagine a situation where the council of that school, will meet like 23 times a year, because they just wanted to, because they wanted sitting allowances. Meanwhile, they were not paying the workers in that school. And so for us, we found that we realized that this is a very, very critical institution in our agricultural plans, and therefore had to upgrade and upscale it. So there was nothing to fix or repair. So I had to just shut it down, and we started rebuilding. We got a professor, a very renowned professor who had been VC of a University of Agriculture, to help come back. They've finished, rewriting the curriculum. They finished doing a selection for staff on a very, professional basis, and they are now seeking accreditation for a school. We then restructured our College of Agriculture, across the state. We now have one College of Agriculture with 3 schools, one in Benin, one in Uromi, and one in Agedembude, all specializing and focusing on agricultural activities that are close to those areas. We're currently rebuilding the infrastructure. By February next year, most of the infrastructure will be ready, the accreditation will be ready. But more importantly, we've now partnered with the private sector. Fortunately, we're blessed with a few big companies in the state who are now part of the management of the school. The new law gives them roles on the council so that we have proper governance on these schools, and almost guarantees that most the kids or the students who will go through that school will most likely get employment with these companies, because the curriculum is designed to suit to make these students employable, not just have certificates. That's what has happened in the College of Agriculture. Ditto School of Nursing. As we speak, there's a contractor on site rebuilding the School of Nursing. We had consultants, helping with the reaccreditation of the schools, and we're not just accrediting them to national training people, nurses that may want to go abroad and work. The last institution, the College of Agriculture, I've spoken to that in the campaign trail. My predecessor in office was just fraudulent about it. He established the school without any plans. He used it was political. He claimed that he had set up 2 colleges of education, one in his hometown. 2 universities, one in his hometown and one in Benin City. He took all the money, funded that one in his hometown. He did not put a kobo in the one in Benin, and left it and said, that was my responsibility. But what we've done today is structure the entire College of Education system. And I've taken, so I had to, that school was actually shut down because he claimed, What we have done now is, we've created the School of Education, College of Education with 3 campuses. One to teach, to train teachers in primary education, early childhood and primary education in Abudu. Another in Igwebe to train teachers who will to teach technical and secondary education. And the third in Afuze to train teachers who would train, to train teachers in physical and special education. Then the and to see if he could let Edo have a federal college of education. And the president kindly acceded. So the Kiadolo School is now a federal college of education. And I hope that being teachers in technical subjects, because we are focusing on technical education. We're opening a lot of at the JSS and SSS levels. Well, we need to have teachers to teach these subjects. And I'm so happy and glad that the federal government acceded to our request, and we now have a federal college of in we've done wrong here. It's sort of, they did in stamps.
So I'd like to take you back to the elections on Saturday. They've been widely lauded, they've been praised for having gone smoothly, especially in terms of expectations. However, there's some rumblings from some quarters that those results will be challenged. What overtures are you making, especially with certain allegations that continue to trail your qualifications to have contested in the first case, namely your certificate, which you have explained ad nauseum, but there's still a sort of looming specter of an electoral challenge at this point. Are you making any overtures to prevent this at all? And also, earlier you mentioned that you want to create a system that checks itself. Well, that would include, surely, the co-equal arm of government, the legislature, which some would say you have treated as subordinate. Are you making any overtures towards them as well?
I think the first, the first part of your questions. First, who want them try to chat in court. I'm all certain. So, the issue. Sorry, there were questions, and I'm trying to just. So, can you just remind me what the second question was? You talked about overtures to the opponents on the elections. I believe that INEC did an amazing job. Thanks to technology, thanks to the doggedness of the chairman.
Your Excellency, sorry to interrupt you at this point, we would like to take a short break. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us, we've been having a conversation with His Excellency Godwin Obaseki, the governor of Edo State, who emerged victorious in the last gubernatorial election in Edo State. Your Excellency, I think we've fixed the audio connection problem now. If you may just continue with the point you were making about your plans, your preparation in the eventuality of a legal challenge in the courts by your opponents.
So because, like I said, we're all witnesses to the conduct of the elections. INEC, did its best. They deployed technology to increase transparency in the process. And so we're not too concerned because you could explain every step of the way. We had a very robust situation room. We had a lot of people on ground, and we monitored ourselves what happened in every unit across the state. By 8 p.m., we were clear as to what had happened in the direction of the election. So I do not see major issues in overcoming any legal challenges in court because the elections were fairly well conducted across the state. The areas where they are contesting cancellations are unfortunately areas where their agents perpetrated violence. And you don't expect that having stolen ballot boxes or kill people, that INEC will then tolerate the conduct and allow you have the votes from those areas. So I don't see any strong basis for any legal challenge. And the margins we're talking about are quite wide. In fact, we are confident if they went to the tribunals, they will lose more. They will lose some of the constituencies. We will challenge several of the constituencies where they claim they won.
Rufai.
All right. Your Excellency, I want to talk about something that is quite very germane. I was talked a lot about during the campaign. That's maternal health and maternal mortality. In fact, the wife of Pastor Ezeyam, Professor Idia Ezeyam, did come and say most of the cottage hospitals in the States are not working. They don't have nurses, they don't have doctors to be able to take care of people across the states. Is this true? If not true, what's your plan to improve this?
Well, first, it's not true. Secondly, maybe we're not aware of what we're doing or deliberately decided to ignore. What we've done is to key into the federal government programs on primary health care. And what we did was to first execute on a sample template what our primary health care hospitals or centers will look like across the state. We did a first pilot of 20 of them, one in each local government, where we created a full package, right, with the infrastructure, ensuring that each center has water, has electricity, has security, and has accommodation for the staff. Each facility has well-trained community health workers. But most importantly, that each center now has technology, has a computer, so that when you walk in there, all your deep vitals, all the key information are taken, and we can see everything about that patient in the back end, the Ministry of Health. There's a portal. The key to the workings of a system are people. You have to focus on the people, and you just have to continue to train and retrain people who are supposed to manage these facilities. We saw it with education, we saw it with the teachers, and that's what we're replicating in the healthcare system. I can tell you that today we've expanded to about 60 of those centers, and the goal is to make sure that we have 200 of them, one per ward, so that you are no more than each citizen of Edo State is not, is connected to a center that's less than a 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes ride from wherever you live. That is the goal, and to make sure it all happens, we've now institutionalized what you call the primary health care agency. So you have a specific agency that, just like the state's Universal Education Board, that now focuses on primary health care. We've taken it out of the Hospital Management Board. They now have an agency looking at the cottage hospitals, as you call them, or primary health care centers. But what is interesting is that all of this is tied together with technology. And we have, we built that platform such that you could tell, and you could do your analysis, you could tell the incidence of diseases, you could tell when kids are immunized or not immunized. You could know when to follow up with certain patients because you have, their vitals, you have data on their medical history. And then, but lastly, it helps you pick up diseases early, and not, early so that they can be treated early rather than, waiting till it's almost too late.
Well, Your Excellency, let me jump the gun, it may seem. You got a lot of support from Edo Central and Edo South, where you got, a majority of the votes, and then you shared Edo North with your opponent. But the people of Edo Central, they have a concern. They say since Professor Osumbo, who was removed via the courts as governor, no other person from Edo Central has been made governor of Edo State. And they are hoping that in 4 years' time, that you will support them so that the next governor of Edo State will come from Edo Central. And they are also requesting that you appoint more people from Edo Central into your cabinet this time around. Are these issues you are likely to consider as a way of showing appreciation to the people of Edo Central?
Yes, even when they did not support me, even when I did not have as much support the last time, I did give a lot of consideration to Edo Central. For me, I'm governor of Edo State and Edo people, and I just believe that opportunities should be shared fairly across the state. That has always been my policy and will continue to be. Because without a sense of fairness, people having a sense of equity that things they've been fairly treated, you will not get the best from them. So that has been my stance and will continue to be my stance, that whatever we're doing, it must pass, like the Rotarians will say, the four-way test.
Let's talk about the Edo Modular Refinery. How far along are you with that? Because modular refineries typically will take about 18 months. And what do you hope that project will bring to the people of Edo State? And also, let's talk about your economic stimulus package. What form will that take? Because we all know the effects of COVID-19, how it's ravaged the economy.
For the modular refinery, I think we're in the last phase, we're the last segment of the first phase. I know when I checked on it last week, they were finalizing arrangements for the final inspection by the Department of Petroleum Resources. They have signed their agreements with NNPC for products, for crude. And so I believe that in the next, hopefully before our inauguration in November, we should be able to get the refinery working. Stimulus package, we're looking at it holistically. We're looking at segments where we need to support people, particularly in areas of livelihoods. The elections have helped. We've driven across the state. My word-to-word campaign has led me to every ward. So I have a fairly good sense of what needs to be done in certain areas to quickly get the people to be busy or utilize the opportunities that exist. One of the areas we're working very hard on, and I'm hoping, I hear the President may have given approval, or the Federal Executive Council may have given approval, is what you call a project you call RAMP, the Rural Access Mobility Program, RAMP, where you can fast-track building of rural roads. Because as we invest, give support to farmers to produce, we give them fertilizers, extension services, we must quickly build infrastructure so that they can evacuate these products. The one big stimulus we're giving to farmers is that we have also given guarantees to buy back their products. So if you've cultivated maize, soybeans, cassava, whatever, we're looking for large off-takers that they can sell to so that they get the money and they're encouraged to go back to work with farming. The other is, like I said, just ensuring a bit more support to people who are producing across the state. And the support will come in form of infrastructure, in form of capacity building, trying to match young people with work. And we will pay for their training, we will, so that employers are encouraged to, not to spend their own resources training these people who work for them. Tax, yes, we're looking at the tax reforms to make sure that we expand the bracket and lower the tax rates. It's about numbers. And then lastly, areas like the efficiency of government. Certificate of occupancies, for instance, CFOs should not take more than 60 days to be, it should not take more than 60 days to obtain a certificate of occupancy in Edo State. So such stimulus helps people access facilities, can now go to the banks and borrow with their title documents. And above all, just making sure that, there's security, and you can produce or do your business unharassed in the state.
Right, right, Your Excellency. So my question is going to be around core infrastructure in the state. Roads, some people are saying Edo is due for flyovers, especially around the Third Junction area. And I also want to talk about power, investment made about the power sector in the state. I know there's Azura. I mean, can you keep us up to speed with how that is working? And also, all other power projects, in view for the state. Oshiomhole,
IPP.
IPP. I want you to talk to us about that. When will that come on stream? And in general, what are the new projects that you might not have announced that we should be looking out for in this new dispensation? More MOUs, as regards infrastructural development in the state.
Thank you. I believe for us, we have done quite a lot of work. It's to make sure that they come into fruition, because some of them are so fundamental. Take electricity, for instance. We have a lot of experience in attracting companies to come and generate electricity. So the Azura went very well, one of the best projects executed on the continent, ahead of time, below, it was completed ahead of time and below costs. But unfortunately, the bulk of the supply, because of the financing agreements, all of that supply had to go into the national grid. And based on that, we were able to quickly get another investor to invest in a smaller plant, this first phase of 55 megawatts, going to 60. So we already have the generating capacity in Edo. And don't forget, Edo is also a transmission hub. The biggest challenge we have is distribution. We have a very ineffective distribution company. So the challenge, the next phase, to make sure that people get light, is to do something about distribution. It's either to get alternative licenses to compete with the company that is in there now, or to buy them out, because we have power. We have more electricity than we can consume in Edo State, but people are just not getting it because the distribution company is just ineffective. I mean, it's very poorly capitalized, poorly managed, and they're not able to deliver services to the people. That's the area we will now have to ensure that we do something about very quickly and rapidly too. So with electricity, with the fiber optic connections, those are the two key infrastructure we've put in place. Roads, you will continue to build roads. I don't see the need for flyover. It's cheaper for me to expand the roads and make them create more lanes than put concrete to begin to fly over. Edo State is very well planned. Benin City is very well planned. It's about opening more arterial roads, for easy connection and spending billions, on maybe we'll build them in future. But right now, I think we need to be more frugal in the way we spend our infrastructure money. So with what we have, the industrial park, with the refinery that can be expanded, with electricity, with fiber optic connections, with a reform in the civil service, I believe those are, and then the river port, I believe for now, if we get those going over the next 4 years, and then rewriting a plan for the next 30 years on how we want to progress, that will have set the foundation for the future. We don't, we don't want to take on too much. Let us execute on what we have done, make it happen. Make the things we have done, we've started, let them happen, because they are very foundational and they are very fundamental. Once those are set, when those are completed, the impact will be so phenomenal. Will now be, such that a lot more companies will be attracted. And the key is reorganizing government, reorganizing the way government functions and interacts with the people. Government has to be very clear about its role and also clear about what it can do and what it cannot do. What it can do is to ensure that it's encouraging and supportive of the activities of the people, not compete with the people. Government has to understand that its first role is regulatory and setting up the policies and framework for people to interact with the government. Government should not be in the business, but government's business is not business. Government is not a money-making machine. Government makes its money from taxing the economic activities of people around the territory it governs. The last point I want to make is, even when government is going to be an operator, if you want to provide education, you want to provide your own schools, those schools have to be managed at the same levels as you expect other people to manage theirs. So government has to have a mechanism for checking itself. And then lastly, government should just focus on the things that people can do. Most people, for them, primary schools may not be profitable. So government provide as many of the primary schools as you need. In any case, you need to do that. Primary care, primary health care, that you need to do. But in the last 2 years, the quality of investments I've seen in private hospitals in Edo has just been impressive. So what we need to do is access. How do you organize the healthcare system? By making sure you have a health insurance scheme such that people will go and are able to afford healthcare services, whether it be healthcare services provided by government or provided by the private sector. So it's that thinking, rethinking government, resetting Edo. That's what we need to do to make Edo great again.
Well, Governor Obaseki, well said, but I should bring this to a close within the next 2 minutes. 2 quick questions. What are your plans for the future at a personal level? You've won the second term that you wanted. What will happen next? Will you, after 4 years, go to the Senate, which has become the retirement home for governors? Or will you seek some other position in the future, maybe the presidency of Nigeria? And then very quickly, what are your plans to unify the people of Edo State who have been divided by what has been a very acrimonious gubernatorial campaign race?
Let me start with the last question. If you look at the elections of Saturday, underlining it's contrary to what you've just said. It's shown unity in Edo, because even look at the margins, even in Edo North. They were very, very marginal, and will show. I hope they go to the tribunal and will prove that in a place like Akoko Edo, we won Akoko Edo. I've looked at the results. I mean, there are only 3, the only areas, there are only 2 local governments that you cannot dispute their victory. But in all the others, they didn't. And so for the first time, Edos have voted as one. They voted together. The acrimony has been caused by one individual and his cronies, not the people of Edo State. Just one individual and his cronies, a very disruptive person. So it's not, for Edo has never been this united, as you see. And you expect it. We didn't expect it to be a smooth sail, because we're undertaking fundamental shifts in the way government had been organized in the past. And all the major political gladiators in the state are aligned. Just one character and his coterie of people who believe in what he believes in, that are on the other side. For me, at the personal level, I believe that, in 4 years, I'll seek admission, maybe go back to school and teach. I don't have any ambitions to go to Senate or legislate. I cannot leave as governor, governing the whole to go and represent a part, what's a part of the whole. I think just being governor and being an effective governor is good enough, and it's something to be grateful to God for. The future is left to God to determine, but for me personally, is to want to go back and impact knowledge.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining us on the Morning Show. Thank you very much indeed, and congratulations once again.
All right, thank you so much for that, Governor Godwin Obaseki.